The big story keeps pointing in the exact same direction. This sheer madness Infantino dreamed up is starting to collapse like a fragile house of cards. Today, UEFA made the massive decision to pull out of all FIFA tournaments, which are none other than the highly prestigious World Cups across different age divisions, starting with the senior men, and even the Under-20 Women's World Cup coming up this September. UEFA chose to walk away from everything because of Infantino's controversial plan to sell off a massive chunk of World Cup profits to private investors. And here is the other twist. Though I personally believe UEFA's stance is much stronger than the other one, which comes directly from CONCACAF. They basically revolted today, declaring they absolutely do not agree with how Infantino is running things at FIFA, claiming that basic transparency is starting to vanish completely now. They are deeply upset that they were never informed about this, and the entire organization completely rejects his proposal to partner up with this private company run by the Canare Group, and I insist, it doesn't really matter to me who runs it, but for Ricardo, it definitely matters. I totally respect that the real issue here is not selling out our passion. Absolutely. But let me be completely honest here. I do not trust CONCACAF one bit. I do not trust them because, as I understand, just yesterday Polanco mentioned that Costa Rica has already raised its hand to offer support. Today, journalist Carlos Ponce from Record reports that Mexico actually agrees with Gianni Infantino's proposal. So, even though CONCACAF as an official body objects, each CONCACAF member is completely free to vote however they want, and that money is so incredibly tempting that I would not dare say Infantino lacks the support of the majority of CONCACAF. That is just my personal opinion. It is how I picture this playing out. And knowing how much they love cash and the desperate need for funding across so many federations, it is really hard to say no to all that money. But if UEFA holds their ground and stands completely united as a solid, monolithic bloc, regardless of the fact that the Czech Republic had previously agreed to Infantino's controversial proposal, if UEFA stands firm and completely pulls its support from the World Cups by withdrawing entirely, then Infantino is in deep, deep trouble. We will see if some of them end up flipping like pancakes. Time will tell. We just have to wait. But in this business, everything can change overnight. Right now, Infantino is in a massive bind. We will see if he can somehow wiggle his way out. Asia is not happy either, although they haven't spoken out publicly, at least from what I know. CONMEBOL won't even say a word, Jorge. They are easily among the biggest players here. That is true. Quite a few nations in the African Football Confederation have already declared their support. But if Spain suddenly decides they are not going to the World Cup to defend their titles, neither men nor women, then FIFA is in massive trouble. By the way, it is completely understandable that Infantino is starting to lose the trust of various member associations, and some of them actually think it is high time he stepped down. Step down? He won't do that. To push him out, someone has to run against him, and right now, Infantino is basically untouchable. I do not know if this rebellion might backfire on him like a boomerang, shifting the path to the upcoming votes. I don't know. Look, Jorge, it really looks like Infantino's seat is getting shaky, and this situation is incredibly complicated for him. You are totally right to analyze these federations individually, especially across CONCACAF and Africa. Absolutely true. That desperate need for cash, the greed of top officials, and those million-dollar checks from FIFA, they are just bribes dressed up as corporate business. That money is incredibly attractive to so many executives, and they could easily flip their votes at any given moment, but the main issue here is no longer the voting power or even controlling FIFA through votes, Jorge. The real problem is that the entire product gets ruined by the decision UEFA made today. Without UEFA, there are simply no events, because you lose 60 or 70%, and maybe I am exaggerating, but 65% of all massive soccer events run directly through UEFA members, both at the international and club levels. A Club World Cup without European giants is nothing, and a World Cup without those elite European national teams, at that point, it basically becomes a glorified Copa America disguised with African guest teams, or worse, a cheap Gold Cup imitation where they invite one random African country. Honestly, it is nothing more than a sideshow. So the actual issue is governance. It is all about buying votes. Maybe Gianni Infantino can manage the fallout for now, but only if UEFA stops their total boycott. And you are right, CONCACAF and Asia hate the plan, but they did not boycott. UEFA is the only one boycotting. If they hold firm, nothing works. Let us be real, Jorge, without European powerhouses, the entire show is dead. Amid all of this mounting chaos, the tension surrounding Infantino is reaching a boiling point. November 18th is the deadline. That is when challengers must officially submit their names. he is highly favored to keep his throne. But UEFA is not going to let him slide. Rumors swirled today about finding a rival candidate. The first name mentioned was the billionaire president of Paris Saint-Germain, Nasser Al-Khelaifi. Reporters asked him directly, but he has zero interest in challenging Infantino. Pure politics. Right now, it is a losing battle. Polanco knows it, and Jorge is also extremely close friends with Infantino. They sail in the exact same ship when it comes to managing the game, so he is definitely not running. But look, Elmer, the geopolitical map of soccer just changed today. The scenario you described was valid last week, but it is dead now. The board flipped because Al-Khelaifi is now a major political pawn for Alexander Ceferin inside UEFA. Exactly. That is where alliances start to bend. I honestly think he is backing away because of his business interests. You are totally right. But the real story is already leaking. From the very first moment we started discussing this scandal, we knew. We said they were hunting for investors. But the money is already there. Why? Because right now, Infantino is dealing with an absolute political catastrophe. UEFA is actively blocking his new tournaments, and CONCACAF is playing a double game. They claim they hate it, but they will keep playing anyway. They will fall in line, even though Jorge pointed out that several key nations are against it. Listen closely to this. FIFA is secretly planning to secure its first massive wave of private funding in less than 100 days from now. Because of this week's chaos, they are rushing the launch of a brand new, highly lucrative World Cup spin-off corporation. An explosive report from Sky Sports reveals a confidential document. They want to secure $4 billion, allowing Infantino to offer his associates a massive payout by October. Listen up. We have more than enough money for you to do whatever you want. They are offering $86 million. Yes, $86 million is right here on the table, enough to buy off even the most expensive football executive. Wait, $86 million? Yesterday it was only $40 million and now it is $86. Yes, Jorge, they are genuinely talking about $86 million right now. In a desperate bid to lock in support before September, and with opposition mounting by the day, FIFA quietly notified local federations that this $86 million payout could easily be used to cover the massive salaries of their highest-ranking employees. I am basically translating directly from the official documents leaked in English. Jorge, during a private presentation detailing this new FIFA Forward Enterprise subsidiary, they laid out all these wild figures. At that very meeting, he spelled out every single detail we are discussing right now. It is causing a massive political frenzy among the delegates who attended his secret Congress. During his private high-stakes meeting with CONCACAF, focusing specifically on our side of the hemisphere, let us be honest, Jorge, once these soccer executives hear those numbers, they will immediately ask where they need to sign. That is exactly why I keep saying Infantino has absolute control over his voters. I do not doubt his political survival for a second. What I highly doubt is whether this whole elaborate scheme can actually work. Because without UEFA on board, there is no show. UEFA is going to turn around and ask, wait a minute, why should we hand over our multi-million-dollar players just to make some private entity rich? Exactly. A private company outside of FIFA control. Of course, elite clubs already hate releasing their star players for international duty under normal circumstances. Imagine a third party demanding a slice of that pie. And these new investors? Well, we are talking about high-risk venture capital, vulture funds, hedge funds. But if they pull this off, the profits will be absolutely astronomical. They are advancing massive cash payments to FIFA just so they can distribute it directly to the local soccer federations. We are talking over $4 billion in cold cash. Yes, $4 billion sitting there ready to be funneled straight into the bank accounts of these voting local associations. Let us be honest, that was the bribe he offered. He offered $20 million to each of the 211 member associations. If you remember, we actually did the math right here. Just multiply those 211 countries by 20 million. You get over $4 billion, and that is just the initial money from the fund. So basically, the fund is providing the upfront cash, but they are going to keep raising that number as things progress. They start off with $20 million, but that number could easily climb all the way up to $86 million based on what we are hearing. Exactly. We are talking about an insane amount of cash here. And meanwhile, at that massive UEFA meeting today, some major things started happening. The board ended up taking a hard stance that pretty much everyone expected. They started debating new tournament structures, and they even brought up the Global Nations League. Gianni Infantino actually pushed hard for this back when he was still at UEFA. But then good old Uncle Bladder got involved. Drama unfolded, things got messy, and they ended up shelving the entire project for years. Now the executives at UEFA want to revive it to create a massive global league. They are talking about a series of mini World Cups, one in South America, another in Europe, another in Asia, and so on, until they have 8 separate regional champions. Then, they would bring those 8 winning national teams together for one massive, blockbuster tournament that everyone would watch. I mean, maybe we are actually looking at, sorry, Ricardo, but we might not even realize it, we are standing right on the edge of a completely new governing body emerging. A rival organization running parallel to FIFA, and then, every single country will have to decide which side they want to back. I do not know. Think about how we do things here in the United States. With baseball, you have the National League and the American League, even though they both run under the exact same umbrella organization, which is Major League Baseball, exactly. But if a rival soccer federation actually pops up like that, well, Infantino is playing with fire. That is exactly what I was going to say, Jorge. Infantino is stepping on the tail of a sleeping lion, and when that lion finally wakes up, watch out. It is going to invent new tournaments, bring in massive sponsors, and hoard all the cash. They will create wild new rival competitions, and FIFA as we know it could completely collapse. They thought they were sitting on a multi-billion-dollar empire, but it might start depreciating fast. Well, we are definitely standing at a massive turning point for the future of global soccer. Yes. Go ahead. I am listening. There is an old saying that applies to almost any situation, especially when there is a massive pile of money sitting on the table. Money talks and bullshit walks. And in this specific case, Jorge, that saying is absolutely spot on because of how much a few extra $1 million can completely transform some of these smaller national federations we all know about. In fact, I was just reading a post a few minutes ago. A colleague of mine who coaches down in the Caribbean was explaining just how life-changing that kind of massive funding would be for those smaller island nations. It changes everything for them. We are talking about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if they let this slip away. So, honestly, Jorge, when you look at CONCACAF, but who really knows, right?